our April meeting. Before I kick off, I'd just like to acknowledge our Anzac services last Friday in commemorating our fallen soldiers and those that are serving in our defence forces now. I just want to acknowledge councillors for your efforts on the day of our civic services, and also our events team that coordinated everything so well, and also to our KBS team that had our cemeteries and everything looking shipshape for the day. Given that Easter was pretty wild weather, there were a few branches down on the Matamata Cemetery, so the team were actually there on the Saturday morning of Easter doing a bit of clean up then to keep ahead of the work. But and also obviously working with the RSAs with our the dawn service as well. The events team have been acknowledged in their efforts with them, and also acknowledged the RSA for their support of our services too. So well done. It was well supported, so thank you. Just kicking off our morning, we have a late apology from Kevin Tappan. We've got Sarah Jane online. Good morning, Sarah Jane, and Dane's just going to be a few minutes late. Kevin, yes. Yes, I'll do a moment, please, to accept apology. Thanks, James. Second of Russell Smith. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Right. So obviously got a few decisions to make today. We've got some in the room to in support of those. Have we got any urgent business? Attention. Any declarations of interest today? Right, I'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes for March 26th. There's no discussion. Could I have someone move in a second, please? Becky James Say, 3 seconded. Caleb, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Yes. Harry, yeah, James in favour for the minutes. And we haven't got a public forum this morning. So we will now move on to item 8.1, which is our civil defence emergency management. Good morning, Mark and Natalie and Toka. Nina.
So I'll take the report as read. Thank you very much. And just note that in the recommendation, the information be received and that the Group Manager Growth and Regulation be delegated to approve a submission on the proposed emergency management bill discussion document. So significant. I'll start with the local local matters, starting on page 1, and the significant part there is the as previously reported that the service level agreement which MPDC have and Waikato Regional Council have enjoyed for the last 5 years, since 2020, is being wound up, and Matamata Piako District Council working towards providing the seeding service delivery to the community through other mechanisms. And I'll throw to Ali if she wants to add to that corridor.
Thank you, Mark. Councillors in there, Adrian. So yes, in regards to civil defence and emergency management, that is currently provided through a service level agreement with the region, and Tuka is actually an employee of the region. That is looking at wrapping up on the 30th of June, and as a result, we're currently investigating how we can deliver civil defence and emergency management. One of the options is obviously going by ourselves, and the other option that we are really looking into is working with our neighbouring councils, as that provides us some resilience in that space. So we will continue to come back to you and report on this. We are looking at doing a 17A review through the local government, and that's about how we deliver the service. So it's really just a heads up. It is a change from what we were previously indicating, which was to continue, I guess around June last year, continue with our SLA. That position has now changed, and we're looking at alternatives.
And just to add, going through that process, you can be assured of the support of the Group Emergency Management Office in particular, is forthcoming, and continue to work with the staff as they navigate through this change. Of course, we collaborate across the Waikato region very, very well in terms of our councils supporting each other should an emergency arise. And well, ably served by Mike and Toka here, so that maintain. In terms of the work plan, the bullet points there, so I won't go through them, but the current focus is preparing for a CDM exercise coming up, and also writing a couple of operational plans for reasonably foreseeable events. Importantly, one of those events, hazards I should say, is related to chemical manufacturer plants near Orangeville, and so that will be working with a range of agencies, noted defence, and of course some nearby Marae, which is situated right across the road. In terms of regional activities, the key activity has been the review of the Group Emergency Management Strategic Plan, and it's been reported to you previously. The status of that is that it was approved as a draft by the Joint Committee on the 24th of March, and so it's open for consultation and that consultation closes on the 6th of May. The National Emergency Management Agency also provide feedback on our draft, and as part of that process, and we're still on target for the Joint Committee to adopt the strategic plan on the 22nd of September. So we're still working towards that. The Group Emergency Management Office is, in conjunction with that, is working on and drafting an action plan to give effect to that strategic plan. There are no actions in that strategic plan, and we're working on those actions to deliver that plan, and that'll be consulted through the coordinating executive group and the Civil Defence Emergency Management professionals as well. And that'll be a 5-year plan with obviously less details. I guess in terms of the key areas really important to all of the communities in Aotearoa is the increasing and improving the Māori partnership, inclusion in the emergency management system is a strong focus, and community empowerment is also a very, very strong focus, and you'll see that comes through in the legislation, draft legislation, which the government will be putting forward in the not too distant future. Those two tenets are really critically important. I personally believe. The iwi participation in CDM, I came and spoke to the Te Mana Whenua Forum. Sorry, I'm losing my mind. Te Mana Whenua Forum at the last hui, and introduced our Kaiarahi Iwi Māori advisor who works across the group area, Kayla Pompey. Yeah, that was just to introduce the concept of including iwi in emergency management and the emergency management system, and the co-development of work plans to deliver on some of the aspirations as expressed in iwi strategic documents and other documents. The other key part that is affecting all group members is the ongoing project on the Hikarangi subduction zone has it. And so, yeah, as we get more information on that, it gets shared with councils. And lastly, just want to acknowledge Chair Anna Park from Taupō District Council was the chair of the joint committee, and at its meeting on the 24th of March, due to her resignation, the joint committee elected a new chair, Councillor Lou Brown from Waipaha District Council. Nationally, it's all about the emergency management bill and the government's efforts to improve the emergency management system. Key to that is the release of a discussion document, which was released on the 16th of April, just before Easter, and which we are asked to give comment on by no later than 13th of May. So really tight time frame, and hence the recommendation in the recommendation panel of this report. We just don't have time to, as we would like to, and so we're collaborating across the key and of our submission to that discussion paper. I do stress it as a discussion paper; it's not a bill, and so yeah, there are several options presented through that. To take questions.
Any questions, Rita? It's pretty self-explanatory, and I guess there's an opportunity to do things slightly differently, given the costs of BSLA. So to explore that as an opportunity, it's very practical. So if there's no further discussion, I would like to move to the recommendation that the report be received, information be received, and that the GM for Growth and Regulation be delegated to approve the submission of the proposed emergency management bill discussion document.
I'm happy to move that.
Moved Caleb, seconded Russell. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Just note, Kevin's actually joined us online. I have submitted his apology. So just from a procedural matter, I would like to have that apology, that motion removed. Sorry, Kevin, I didn't know you were actually attending online. I missed that piece. So we'd actually put in your apology. So I'd like to move that we change that recommendation and please.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Seconded Caleb, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried, thank you. Just thought it was a procedural matter. Okay, now we'll move on to our local waters done well piece.
Great idea, we've gone different door.
Yeah, the left-hand door's a bit squeaky. We should go out the right-hand one. Yeah, Don and Vaughan, you're welcome to come and sit up and have some questions asked of you. There's some seats there. You can leave the owner. And this is item 7.1, the local we've done well options and consultation document. Big piece of work.
This report to you this morning on behalf of yourself and team. We've gone to this report to get us to where we are today. It has been a collaborative initiative by all of the heads of departments and those that have expertise in this field. So we're hoping that the information before you this morning addresses concerns and questions that were presented to us. So obviously the purpose of the report today is to present to you the assessment of two viable service delivery options for your consideration, and we'll be seeking your confirmation of your preferred option as well as approval for the local residential consultation document as the preferred option. You'll also have information that we put the consultation document through for legal review, and so we'll also be looking for some minor amendments resolution today to address that issue. So obviously the options that have been considered, we've considered 5 options. and those options were what we have been provided through the government reform process and identified as options for consideration. Of the options we've looked at 5, and we have ruled out 3. So the 3 that we ruled out was a single council organisation, the mixed council trust owned organisation, and the consumer trust organisation, primarily due to the inefficiency of those models and borrowing limitations. So that has been detailed in your report. The 2 viable options that we have evaluated is the internal business unit and the Waikato Waters Done Well council-controlled organisation. An internal business unit, because we already have an internal business unit. However, we recognise that to proceed with that as a model, we would need to do a significant amount of work and would need to enhance that substantially. And obviously, you have all the detail on the Waikato Waters Done Well CCO. Obviously, we see scale there and opportunity. What we did to evaluate the options, those 2 viable options, is that we looked at it in 2 ways. We looked at it from a qualitative perspective, and so we identified 6 evaluation criteria, and we evaluated the 2 models based on that criteria. It is a qualitative assessment. You can see the detail of that on page 15. We then took that evaluated criteria and we did a comparative assessment across the 2 models, and of that qualitative assessment, what we found was that the Waikato Water Done Well CCO model was the preferred option. And when we evaluated the criteria, there was where you would expect to see an internal business and a CCO model stacked up a little bit or higher for good reasons. So, i.e. regulatory compliance, the CCO model was always going to have scale and the ability to have greater oversight than an internal business unit would have. Financial sustainability obviously would be 500% borrowing capacity under the Waikato Done Well CCO. That was always going to be higher than an internal business unit. And obviously regional collaboration was the other area where Waikato would have done well on slightly again. So the key insights for us in terms of Waikato Done Well CCO was obviously economies of scale and opportunity, the enhanced borrowing capacity so that access to 500% funding, stronger regulatory influence and efficiency. We thought better workforce attraction and retention, as well as operational efficiencies and consistency. That was what stood out to us when we compared the 2. There is risk. There is risk in terms of both models. So the common risks to both models we saw as transition complexity, cost uncertainties, staff retention challenges, and policy or legislative changes that are unknown to us currently. Specific risks for each of the models were identified as the internal business unit, financial resourcing and compliance. For the Waikato Waters Done Well CCO with the transition costs and loss of some life control. But as with all risks, there are ways to mitigate. Financial summary. So in the early years, you'll see that cost is similar between the internal business unit and the CCO, but longer term, the CCO is more affordable and it removes debt from a council balance sheet, which will result in financial thinking of the organisation going forward. With water metering, so there needed to be transition needed under both models, so sort of stayed similar. It is a legacy decision, and because of that, I think that you've identified and supported the long-term thinking that's in terms of the done for. So with all of that, the preferred option is Waikato Water's done well, CCO, and we will be looking for your support to take that to consultation. At this stage, the consultation period would be the 5th to the 25th of May. There is obviously the consultation document which is attached to your papers. We do need to make some tweaks with that as a result of legal review. The plan is some in-person events, to have the information available online via resident council offices. We'll collect submissions, but we don't have any. So that is currently where we're at, and the team up there.
Thank you, Fiona. There's been a lot of work going into this. A lot of water's gone under the bridge talking about this.
Oh, God.
But it's acknowledging that it was brought to our attention quite early in this term that the status quo was actually becoming quite challenging for us, acknowledging that our targeted rates have increased significantly in the past few years as a signal to us that there's some headwinds. And given that we've got some collaboration across our councils in the Waikato, and I expect, I'm hearing that other councils are now also, that haven't joined us, may consider joining in the future. So, you know, it's the risk to stand alone is quite significant. The opportunity to work together more collaboratively with economies can't be ignored. And acknowledging that we are the first few years that's pretty level, but it's where it heads after that. And this is a long-term decision. This isn't something that we're looking at today. This is something for us, for probably our children, our grandchildren. This is intergenerational. This has been talked about since about 2005, I believe. And here we are 20 years later. Peter, question. Thank you.
Apologies, Councillor. I'm going to take up a few minutes of your time with a few that I don't know, I guess points I wish to make rather than concerns or questions. And if you know all the answers to these, and I apologise for wasting your time, but I thought about this the other day and thought, well, am I going to ask these questions? I don't care if I look stupid or a bit ignorant, but I don't look
stupid. Statement of question.
I don't live in this world, so these might seem a bit basic, but here we go. There's a few of them. And the page references refer to the agenda item we have. So the first one is on page 5, and it talks about unknown costs of setup and ongoing delivery. I mean, in the document, there may be some reference to the actual costs, but I guess they're in the order of millions of dollars, and I don't know what it's going to cost to set this up. But I wonder if there should be some costs included somewhere, approximate costs of how much it's going to cost to set up the CCO. That's the first point.
Yeah, so I think we should reduce each concern. Could you brief us on the setup costs and how that will be treated from a cost perspective?
Yeah. So first of all, Matamata Piako. Also greetings to staff. So there's two phases to our approach to cost. First, we know what the current budget is in terms of getting to the other side of public consultation and a legally incorporated CCO. And we believe that's been budgeted and agreed amongst the 7 councils, and we're tracking to come in under budget for that. Parallel to the council consultation process, we are preparing a transition plan. So how do we get from a legally incorporated CCO to one that's delivering water services for the first mover councils, what we call to go from day 0, July this year, to July next year being day 1 is operating. That transition plan we want to have completed by the end of June, and to have that transition plan costed, and then for those costs to be known by councils when they make their final decision to become shareholders. And so we don't have, there are loose numbers being thrown around, but I prefer to give us the space to work out what the actual transition plan is, to cost it up and to bring that back to you. In terms of funding that, we expect by the end of this year, if all goes well, that the CCO will have the ability with councils or shareholder backing to be able to borrow in its own right from LGFA, and therefore all those establishment costs that have been carried by councils to date would be passed over to the CCO along with your water debt. So that's the way that we're planning. So at the end of the day, any establishment costs would be borne by the CCO as opposed to each shareholder. Sit on the water CCO.
Yeah, and somebody will pay.
Yes, but because the CCO has got greater borrowing ability and it can borrow for longer periods and things like that, the cost should not be, and we've got the scale and be able to achieve efficiencies, the cost won't be as high as if those sat on your own balance sheet.
So I guess just a further question to that is if we formed our own single CCO unit, we would be up for establishment costs of a CCO anyway in our own right. So that's the other side of it too, that there'd be a cost saving if we would go with our own unit.
Yeah, and Don might remember the numbers, but when Waikato District Council went through this process and shifted their water business across into water care, the establishment costs we were given a figure, but the payback was within a number of years. Were they 2 years was the payback period from the costs that they spent.
Any other questions? Peter's still got his list of things. Is there anything attached to that? Yeah, Bruce has got
sorry, on that, I think the important, from my perspective, when it comes to consultation, you need to have a very clear narrative, because if somebody comes to you and says, what's this going to cost us? You're going to say, well, look, we're still putting it together, or and it could be this. You've got to have a narrative that will stack up.
That was my question.
Cool. Yeah.
I'll just comment on that. I think what the report acknowledges is that in both options you cannot be precise about costs. What the CCO model ignores is the cost of operating a CCO, which is what we've acknowledged in the report is that if we went down to IBU, there's probably more costs we would add in. But on an apples for apples basis, in terms of making a legacy decision for the long term, not almost, the CCO model comes out better. I said to the council on many occasions, I'll say it again, whatever numbers we put up for an IBU, CCO will always beat it. So I think with the team acknowledging this, and I think if I go to Vaughan's comment, we can't be absolutely precise about every cost. That's a reality. But on an apples for apples basis, if you like, we've got here's the cost here for the BU, here's the cost here for the CCO. The CCO is a better option. So it's as I say, we will populate the transition costs more in more detail. And what has been a challenge for us as the council is, we haven't budgeted for that transition cost. So if we've got a transition cost
for an IBU, we're going to have to meet that from our rates, our rate payers now. Ratepayers will finally pay it off. But the transition costs for a CCO will be spread over the life of that of the asset effectively, because the CCO will borrow for that cost. So it's an implementation issue. But I think the point the team are flagging, if I can, Councillor Jager, is that you cannot be precise about all of those costs and for either option. But on an apples for apples basis, principle applies that the CCO financially is a better option. I don't know if that helps.
We are going to be asked.
Yeah, and I think we've got some clarity there. Is that, yeah?
Well, I mean, if I go to a consultation event and somebody says, well, no, your CEO said that it's going to be better cost-wise, I say, well, as Bruce just pointed out, well, show me some figures to back that up. And
100%, and that's what we've got from Waikato Water's done well financial analysis of a CCO with the operating cost of a CCO in it, and we've tried to put enough information in a consultation document that ensures that we can answer those questions. As I just said before, there are things we can know, and there are some things that we just have to accept we don't know. But does the principle apply? And I know that is, to an extent, a leap of faith. What I would say to you is 7 sets of financial expertise from 7 councils. In fact, more than that, Waikato also looked at the model for the CCO, have put this under scrutiny and have all agreed that there is validity and credibility in the model. But I certainly couldn't say to any member of the public, this is the absolute precise dollar value of an IBU setup or a CCO setup. I mean, we won't. If you make a decision to go down an IBU, I will start calculating that information better. So there are some things which we have to accept are a reality. But does the principle still apply?
Next question.
well, it's just a point really on page 6, and we've spoken about this before. It talks about, we're going to take the water out of council, the water debt away from council's which is good, because council will have less debt. And it talks about increasing MPDC's financial headroom for non-water priorities and emergencies, which of course means to me we can borrow money to do other things. But the old ratepayer who pays the cost for all of this is got to furnish the debt with the CCO, and then all of a sudden council's got this extra room to borrow more money to do other things. So the ratepayer is going to have to, meet that other debt as well, which is, unforeseen debt or unproposed debt.
And that's an interesting statement, because only a portion of the population receive these water services, whereas the general ratepayer doesn't pay. So when you uncouple the debt from the waters, the general rate we don't want to escalate just because there's headroom. I think that's the conversation there around business as usual. The challenge we would have, as a good example, is our pools are ageing in our community. The Matamata and Morrinsville pools are both. Morrinsville's up first for renewal. For us to borrow in years to come, if we were to stay as we are, to be able to borrow for building a new pool would be a challenge with our current headroom. So that'll be something for, if this all goes through, is something for councils to consider very judiciously around what it is that the ratepayers are paying for, because the targeted rate will while it will sit in another entity, we will be very aware of that cost
The combined
to the
cost.
ratepayer.
It would be another bill.
Your little lady down there that's paying water is then may well be expected to pay for the council's decision to provide additional services.
Correct. Can I just make a couple of comments about that? We've, right throughout this process, I know the Mayor has been, I know all of the councils have been very upfront to say there is no free lunch here. The costs are going up and they're going to have to be met. Does one option mean that more opportunity to lower those costs than the other? Is the fundamental one of the fundamental questions. But I know I take your point about the narrative of Councillor JJ. It might creating headroom for council might make it look as though, oh, away you go. Then I take you back to our 2024 LTP discussions when we talked about, and you as a council were very rigorous and said we can only do the must do's. There's a lot of should do's we'd like to do, and there are some could do's we like to do. And one of the areas that we had to cut back because of water's capital, because of not only capacity to actually get work done, but also debt, was in the community facilities and those areas. We actually trimmed that capital back because we had to focus on the must-do. So I think the important point you make is it's not open slather that suddenly we go and get to maximum debt. It's not, and I remember a number of members in this room said a debt level maximum is not a target. You still have to have financial prudence around that. So it's a very good point you make. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. Next one.
Sorry, there are a few. On page 20, the document refers to the average annual price increase is estimated at 4% once all councils have transitioned their water services to the CCO. So I assume from that that the IBU cost will be increasing at more than 4% per annum. However, I've seen a graph somewhere that says for the next so many years, it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's better to go with the IBU than the CCO for the next so many years. So what I would like to read somewhere is what the estimated increases are if we don't go with the CCO.
We do have graphs in the documentation that demonstrate that. I can look. Based on the LTP 2024, what the graphs say there, now it's 2024 capital figures, is that the lines are pretty close for most of the 10 years, and then but it's post that 10 years on the 2024 figures. What you know as a council, I've shared with you, is that those 2024 figures will change, and quite dramatically, to meet compliance requirements. And so the picture at the end of 10 years that is currently in the model, that the BU is close to the CCO, is going to change. If those numbers translate, they will change quite dramatically. I have shared those numbers in a draft form just to show council that, but I'm happy to go down into the detail and more detail to show you where we've included these comparisons. But based on the LTP figure that all other councils have done, there's no question, and it's referred to the report, the numbers are very similar for rate increases over that 10-year time frame. Post 10 years, because of the efficiency gains or provisions that have been put in conservatively for the CCO, there's no comparison. No comparison in terms of rates or in terms of debt levels. So, I mean, I'm happy to go to the numbers specifically in here to show you where that is, on what, but I believe we have included the graphs to try and show that. And we're not trying to suggest, by the way, we're not trying to suggest that the CCO is an immediate fix. It's an opportunity for us to do things differently.
Just at the back of that too, when we had those discussions, I think the costs and the cost savings for the CCO were pretty, restrained, and I think that some of the costings for doing it by ourselves were pretty optimistic. And there's some very clever guys in that group over there, and I don't think the numbers are going to look as different as what they were in that graph. I think it's probably a worst case scenario almost. So I'm pretty confident but like I said, there's so many ifs, ands, and buts in those numbers that we'll put up there that it wouldn't take much for it to change it and throw it way out from where it is. And that's the problem with putting numbers on any of this stuff.
Most of my points are just for general clarification.
Yeah, no, it's great. And the things that people will ask.
The next one talks about water meters. I mean, in our books, I think in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, there's some reference to putting water meters in. I assume with the CCO, that might have to happen a bit earlier to, uniform all the councils who are part of it, but let's not dwell on that. I'll just have to zip down to page 29 here to make sure I've got the right graph. Just bear with me for a minute. Enjoy the quiet.
You have our attention.
On page 29, there's a graph. I hope there's a graph when it gets here. Yeah, that shows the cost, you know, the CCO versus the IBUs pretty much being the same until 2030. Then there's a big jump in the blue line for the cost of the ratepayers. I just can't remember why there would be such a big jump in that particular year.
Oh, look, I actually defer to the I believe I have an answer, but if I could defer to the CCO expert about when the efficiency provision and when they kick in.
So the way that and it is a model that's been created, and as I said in an earlier meeting this morning, I've went through this process that every model's wrong, it's just how wrong it is. So we can only model what we think might happen. Often the reality is quite different, but based on the model that we've created, we've compiled every council's long-term plan, and then we've put in some assumptions about how things might look differently should we aggregate services. So one of the things we've assumed is over and above council costs, we believe to get efficiencies we need to invest. I think we've invested about $40 million in the model to find efficiencies. We don't believe they'll just happen. We've got to spend to save. So we've built in an extra cost of $40 million. And then we've assumed, as Mania said, a pretty conservative efficiency gain of 1% per year in savings. And I think about after 8 years, it takes about 8 years before we start to get a return on that $40 million. But after 15 years, that's $400 million of efficiency savings compared to a long-term plan. So that's what the model shows. The model doesn't say how that $400 million should be spent. Should it be used to advance capital works programs? Should it be used to pay off debt quicker? Those are all options for the board to make, but that's what the model's telling us is from that initial spend and an assumption of 1% per annum. And if I compare the Watercare board, they have an annual efficiency target of 4% per year. So 1% is pretty conservative. You're looking at $400 million after 15 years. So.
I guess one example of a efficiency gain be a centralised control room that you'd invest in something to make it. That would be something that would drive efficiency, I imagine.
And the idea is that there is a strategy that's developed with shareholders, with the board, to go where do we want to hunt down the efficiencies, IT systems, whatever they are, but we want to plan
It's going to be strategy
rather than just assuming they'll happen.
Yeah.
If I could, Adrian. Councillor Horn put his finger on the button the last time I was here, and that is, you know, with two less regulatory monitors or the odd person here, there, or everywhere. The big savings are in the capital work spend and the efficiencies gained. I mean, we reinvent every plant's design. For mistakes, we don't even have standard designs for pump chambers. We don't have common buying authority with pump suppliers. You imagine if you went to Flake and said, look, we want to buy 200 pumps across the Waikato over the next 5 years. What is the deal you're going to offer? I mean, they're where the big efficiencies can be established, and that's why the model assumes it takes a while to gear up the systems and the processes and relationships with providers and contractors for a few years, but that investment starts to pay off as you move forward. And every time you engage a consultant, and this is not, I mean, we love consultants, don't we?
You are one.
I'm half of one. But what is it they're going to do? They're going to reinvent the wheel for you. Of course they're going to. That's how they make money. And if you have standardization and design on procurement, on all the rest, and equipment, all those sorts of opportunities that can be achieved through an aggregated provision model, that's where the real rubber hits the road.
Can I just say on the back of that? This is one of the things questions I was thinking about asking, and yeah, that's the crux of what I came to with it as well. So that's where your big savings are going to be, is in trying to get that stuff to line up and having 2 pumps lying in the yard that will service everything inside this area instead of having to have 2 in every yard to service it and things like that. I guess what worries me a little bit is that there's so much capital works needs to be done in quite a short time frame. Like, they want it done in the next 10 years. And my concern is that the CCO takes up so much time in just paperwork and logistics that by the time that that's done, and then you start working on, common pump facilities and water treatment plants and whatever it might be, half the capital works is already done, and you've lost the opportunity to save the money on half of the work that's still to be done. So, I know you've a lot on your plate, but the sooner that those things can start happening, and they can start putting in one design wastewater and water treatment plants and getting them ready to run. Like, I would like to see them being worked on as soon as everybody's signed off. Someone needs to start designing that stuff so that we can start putting in one design facility like 2 years from now, not 5 or 6 years from now, because that's going to be half of it's going to be done by then.
We couldn't agree more.
Good.
And we understand the need to not lose sight of establishing relationships with the regulators, with the civil contractors, and pushing that planning forward in terms of how we can realise those opportunities. Because it'd be very easy, as you say, to get consumed in the day-to-day and continue to do what you do and not grab those opportunities soon. Suddenly 5 years has gone by and nothing's been done.
And you've built a whole lot of plants, and you've lost the opportunity for the next 50 years to make those gains.
The only thing I'd say in that, and it sounds a little bit sort of echo and esoteric, but if you do grab or if you do establish a lower cost of replacement for plants, even if you've built them, you then lower your depreciable liability, because you say, well, actually, this plant, I built it for 60 million, but I can replace it for 40, so immediately you can drop your depreciation funding as well. So whilst you still incur the cost and have the debt, your actual operating expense will drop away as well.
Peter?
Yeah, last point, and thanks for that. I mean, the efficiencies are good. It's a good selling point for this. And, part of that, of course, is, the capital placement items and all that sort of stuff. I just want us not to forget the statement in the documents about the debt of 979 million, whatever year that might be. That's all good, because, the MPDC ratepayers, share of that is somewhat less than 979 million, which is good. But of course, that debt has to be financed by the users of the water. And I've got a bit of a concern about, what interest rates are going to be in 10 or 12 or 15 years when that debt is sitting on the CCO's books that we are financing. I wonder what the interest rate. So I wonder what interest rate was used to work out the costs of financing the debts as the CCO progresses. I mean, and what if, I guess in 12 years' time, it's 10% interest, we'll just have to pay.
the actual assumptions around the interest rates are disclosed. And these are one of the things that all the finance managers had a discussion with the modelers about what they should include. So the point I was going to make about it is if we don't go with if we don't go with the CCO, I can give you a model that will show you what the impact of that cost will be on our ratepayer. And I can have some confidence in that model because we do that with our LTP. And I'm not saying I have confidentiality, but I can do that calculation. What I can't do and won't do in my model for you on that is include any efficiency gains in that. I will not put a provision in there at all. So this is the opportunity. In a sense, the aggregation enables us, creates an opportunity. We still have debt, and we still have a lot of debt. The reality is that that debt is more affordable for a CCO than it is for us standing on our own. So your comment is absolutely right. The interest rate assumption we made and has made in here will be wrong. The assumption made, the interest rate assumption we made in LTP will be wrong now. But based on the information that we have, does the principle apply that aggregation creates a bigger opportunity than us standing on our own? So I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Councillor Jager. You're absolutely right. There are concerns. The opportunity exists with aggregation for something that we can't do on our own.
And I guess in 10 years' time, if interest rates are 10%, well, we'd be still facing those high rate rises anyway as an individual unit. So it's the opportunity to have the scalability of borrowing, because we all know the higher geared you are as a little organisation, you pay a premium on your interest, whereas a larger entity that's got a greater borrowing power will get a better deal in interest rates. It may not be lots of percent, but that percent adds up over a large amount of money. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, also going to agree and appreciate Councillor Jagar's questions are really good, and will be asked this question through the public consultation process. I was also going to raise the point of what do we think will happen in the Waikato in the next 20 years in terms of, will there be one CCO? Or do we think there will still be only two? We don't know, but this is also about positioning Matamata Piako District Council, maximising your leverage or any discussions of that nature. You're going to have better negotiating power with friends than on your own, should you be forced to take another step further in terms of a one CCO model, but at least this maximises your leverage.
Yeah, that's a strategic view that we have to take. And I think for any further questions?
Yep.
Sharon?
Sorry. I get that there's risks for both models and uncertainties, but where I'm really unsure and need further elaboration on is the trade-offs area. So from MPDC's point of view, is it going to be, what are those trade-offs, and will it have a negative impact for our ratepayers? You know, it doesn't actually outline what they are.
So when you say trade, as an example that perhaps you've got a local project that's a priority, and will it still be a priority in a big organisation? So, yeah. So our approach to that is what we call prioritisation, and that initially we are proposing a ring fencing approach. So money coming out of your ratepayers is spent back with your ratepayers. There's no cross subsidisation that will be occurring unless in future the shareholders decide to start to do cross subsidisation and have an approach that enables prioritisation between the different communities. But we think in the short term, we just need to walk before we can run, and make sure that there's a ring fencing approach.
So the only thing that, if you say that, it could be said, well, if it's a ring fencing approach, why are we doing this? If that's what a comment that we are going to make to the public, if that is true, then we're ring fencing our money for our projects, then why are we going? Exactly. That's I understand it all, and I believe that this is the only way forward. But you know, those are the comments that we have to overcome.
Yep. And all I can say at the moment is that if we did ring fence, I think there'd be a lot of the concerns of cross subsidisation would outweigh the concerns with ring fencing. But secondly, even through ring fencing, you're sharing costs. You're lowering overheads. One chief executive versus 7 chief executives, one board versus 7 governance boards, that sort of thing.
I can just comment, and I refer back to the sessions that we attended with our business groups last month. CA5s and the business breakfast. Probably, I would be fair to say the most common question, I'm thinking about the trade-off, Councillor, most common theme or concern that was raised, and it was actually well received by that audience. I was very, got a very good hearing. The most common question I can recall being asked was, well, you don't have control anymore. And that's acknowledged in the report. The main trade-off here of a CCO versus a BU in terms of where we are today is you don't have the same control that we have with our own resources. Now, a very wise previous CCO made a comment in this room. CEO, very wise CEO made a comment in this room. This control that we think we have is shifting. The regulators are going to be dictating to us what we have to do. So the perception of the control we have of today is not what it is in the future. And I think a good example of this for me is NZTA and our roading subsidy. Our program will be approved as long as we satisfy them. If we do not satisfy them, they won't subsidise it. But we're talking about even further than that. We're going to have the Commerce Commission as an economic regulator saying to us, and this again is what our CEO said before, are you getting enough capital done? You are not performing here. You need to do something. How can you justify the increases, or why aren't you increasing it enough? The game changes, and this is one of the reasons and one of the challenges that we have for the future. That whole environment changes. So I want you to reflect on that, because what I've reflected on is actually how much control would we have as an IBU?
At the end of the day, we still,
government are going to do.
yeah, at the end of the day, we still have that ownership as a shareholder. That's the key, because that was the other question, was ownership. Caleb.
Bit of advocate there. I got asked this question, and it threw me for a six. I was asked by this person to ask you, because they knew that you were involved in it. And the question was, does Vaughan have complete confidence in what's happening here? And I thought, that's actually a great question. And I said, I assume he has confidence because he's still in it. So are you confident with this process as it stands and how it's going to look going forward, so that I might be able to reassure someone who's going to be deeply affected by this transition?
Thank you. I'm pleased they're interested in what I think. But for me, and this is a person, this is personal, because I come from a small community of Portuguese. I get the importance of small communities and councils and local government, and therefore the importance of local influence and control. I'm a lot more confident in terms of what's happening now than was under the previous government's approach, where in effect Wellington was controlling and designing everything, and we were being, and they weren't the design, that the approach wasn't fit for purpose locally. What gives me confidence in what's happening at the moment is that you, through this process, have identified what your local concerns are, and you have designed collectively with your friends, other councils, a company that best addresses those local concerns and are being built into the constitution and the shareholders agreement and everything as much as possible, noting that the CCO will still have to have a little bit of arm's length from the shareholders, independent board that still needs to be compliant with regulations, but you've maximised the opportunity to make sure that it's your CCO as opposed to a CCO that's been dumped on you. And for me, that gives me confidence. I think, and this is all about people and leadership at the end of the day. What I'm seeing in the Waikato is leadership. We talk about how te menui o te ao he tangata, he tangata. Everything relies on people and relationships and leadership. And we're enjoying really good leadership in the Waikato at all levels, elected members, chief executives, and staff all working well together. We've got to make sure that that culture that's been fostered continues, because we've seen, and we've got leadership we can see around the world at the moment that can unravel a lot of good work. So this is going to come down to people, end of the day, maintaining our collective confidence as we go forward. It's a long answer, but it is about, it's people that give me, the people in leadership that are giving me confidence in the approach that we're taking.
And I guess not forgetting that the Tad's water example is tried and true. It's been in place for a while now. And so this isn't something that's just been created as a first. There's been a lot of learnings, initially with Scottish Water with the previous reforms, and these are not the previous reforms in any way. On.
Got a theory around this. We're talking about something that's complex. And there's lots of complex issues in the world of local government. To get a sustainable approach to addressing complexity requires us to manage two tensions. One is community agreement, and the other is technical certainty. I saw in the previous government reform a lot of technical work going on, but not a lot of effort in the community agreement space. What we've done with this process is front-ended the process with political mandates, social mandates, and done enough technical work to support the political decision making, but we haven't done so much technical work to get ahead of the people and the councils and your decision making. As that political mandate increases, we can start to ramp up the technical work to make sure that it's stacking up technically, financially, legally, whatever it is. But that's the other feature of this approach that's given me confidence.
Excellent. Bruce.
Thanks, Warren. So you're confident, right, that this approach, right? I am too. But anyway, this approach compared to the previous government, more centralised thing. Now, if you look back at the political side of it, the general public were not in favour of it because of the ownership change and the iwi participation in the governance and control. So on page 20, we talk about partnership with Mount Whenua and iwi. The use of an arm's length entity to manage three waters will influence how iwi and Maori are able to participate in decision making. And it's got to be carefully considered. Discussion with Mana Whenua will be ongoing in this important discussion. Yeah. It's where, or can you explain where the iwi participation will be in this new agreement compared to the old? I'm not, it's not criticism, I just want to,
Look,
this is what's going to come out, all right?
Yeah, no, I understand. I think, well, number one, there's a reality, and the reality is uniquely, the Greater Waikato has co-governance arrangements
with the rivers.
The Waikato Valley Authority, the Hauraki co-governance, the Hauraki, the Hauraki Gulf co-governance, and so there are treaty settlement obligations with each of those, and so irrespective, the organisation has to respond to those treaty settlements and respect them and deliver on them, and iwi would the proposition is that iwi the shareholder council for the thing will establish how those relationships can be progressed and given satisfaction, and that's number one. So that's just the reality. The other opportunities in terms of community, if you like, well-being. I mean, in terms of the regulatory space and consenting processes, and that, again, we are involved as an affected party. They're involved in those processes. They influence how that's done. Now, that relationship, if it's going to be productive, has to be developed and respected. Because if it's not, the water company or the provider will find life very difficult, irrespective. And so I think that's what it's referencing to. But beyond that, I think there are opportunities in the Waikato in particular that iwi can participate in, for example, this is not a dead certificate, an investment. What's
can I? Yeah. So can I? Because that leads on, and Gary, Gary often talks about the economic possibilities.
Yeah.
All right. And because on page 24 it talks, will provide a large and rural and provincial model for multiple iwi engagement with and development of economic partnership investment. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. And you could.
I was wanting some sort of an example of how it could.
Perhaps I'm getting too sort of flowery in my language, but you know, why isn't it an argument that social good can come out of this? You know, in the sense that, you know, somebody can build a plant and operate it. If the company feels that there's benefit and build and operate, think about if a particular iwi like Tainui, for example, says, we'd love to build, you know, a plant for you. This is what we'll do and run it for you. Imagine the social good coming out of that, in the sense that it's good for the CCO. Somebody's taking that debt on, and it's good for the provider in that they can take their tamariki and train them as water and wastewater operators and learn those skill sets. That's good for you. That's up to the CCO to do that. What you as shareholders will be saying is, here are some outcomes we want you to achieve. You achieve them and let us know how you're going to do it. And the proposition is that that relationship is developed, not conceived at this point in hard detail, but it is allowed to develop because of all those opportunities and provisions that already exist.
Any further questions? I think we've exhausted. Oh, just one question. Oh, you carry on for me.
Well, it was just to say that there is an agreement between the councils at the moment that once we know who the shareholders are going to be following public consultation, that they sit down with iwi chairs and go, what could a partnership look like? Operationally, strategically, whatever, and come up with a proposal that comes back to each shareholder council. And if each shareholder council is happy with that partnership approach and proposal, then the shareholder forum can move forward on that basis. So it's working it out as we go. And by law, any existing arrangements that you might have with landowners, with iwi, to the extent that they relate to water services, need to be transferred across. So there's some minimum requirements.
Okay. Would you like to just refer briefly to the legal review? Because that's part of our recommendation, isn't it? That I think stormwater was the particular one. There was the legal review had a few bits and pieces that weren't significant, but the stormwater one was something that popped up strategically that we perhaps need to consider.
Yes. Thank you. So we have an additional information item for you in terms of stormwater services. What we are proposing is that at this point in time, the preferred option is to keep stormwater in-house. Obviously, the legal review flagged this as an issue. We do have some thoughts around that, but thought it was a good opportunity to get the direction from you while we're here today discussing the wastewater, and then we can go away and do some more we can discuss.
Okay, so just to speak to that, pass the microphone.
Yeah, it's just what we've included is a resolution, just to be very clear around stormwater, and the additional information that you have received to actually look at the two options that we considered for that as well, and how the legislation is worded that we definitely have to go out to consultation with our water and wastewater services, but for stormwater, we should still provide that transparency about the options we've looked at, but we don't actually need to, I suppose, confuse the community as well around making that decision around stormwater, but we can be, I suppose, more direct around what our proposal is. And we've looked at in the report, you will see that for stormwater, and there are other councils that have done just the same way. I know Hauraki that are keeping their stormwater. This is at this moment in time, there is always that future that we can look at contracting some of the delivery parts out for stormwater. But at the moment, keeping that with council, there is a lot of, I suppose, interaction with the roading, with our parks and with our land use planning. So at this stage in time, talked to you about this previously, that it's better to keep that in-house for now, but we can look at for actually a council resolution in the future that we contract some of the delivery parts of stormwater out to the Waikato Water Stanwell as well. So we've just added a resolution in here just to provide that clarity and make that a formal decision. Yeah, and just we'll probably look at just including a little bit more information in our consultation document around that, just to say that. And this is the way council is delivering the stormwater function, and for now.
Yeah. It's been my time. I think it's thank you for bringing that to us, because it's always been 3 waters, right? And Waikato Waters is 2 waters. So what happened to the 3rd waters? So it's really good that strategically, from a governance perspective, we have considered this today with this recommendation, because it's part of the bigger picture of the 3 waters. And of course, it's the complexity around stormwater and drains and stuff as well. What's a Waikato Regional Council drain and what's a council drain and all those sorts of things. So it's quite complex. So probably simpler at this point to keep it in-house. So that's
my question is it? Because to me it's water. And aren't we then having to keep people?
Well, it's the interaction with roads and reserves is the challenge that we. Yeah.
It's kind of messy to me.
I think we definitely need to relook at. I'll bring back council should make that decision a little bit further down the track, and probably some planning to do around that. But one of the examples is with our stormwater, a lot of the treatment itself is actually on the road, so all the rain gardens are managed actually by roading. We don't have too much land drainage, but as we said, there's a lot of the regional council work for our drains in our rural areas. And then also we've got a number of stormwater ponds that sit on reserves, and we have some ponds that are actually managed. Most of ours are managed by the parks team, but there's also quite a lot of overlap with some of the spaces. And we've got recreational use and a stormwater pond in the same area. So it's definitely something that we should look at and going forward to organise that better. But at the moment it's easier.
And the reality is the costs, when it comes to efficiencies, the costs are sitting in our delivery of our water, wastewater. And if we think about what's been happening in the last few years, the cost rising, our ability to get the work done, even what's in our budgets now and our ability to actually get it done is a challenge for us. So yeah. Right. If there's no further questions or any discussion, thank you, Fiona, for that. Well, very large piece of work, putting it all together. It has been a lot of work. So if we go back to our recommendations, so we've got, need to be on.
Are we looking at the new one?
You can look at the screen. Well, we've got the initial pieces, and then there's the stormwater as an addition.
Page 7?
No, we haven't actually got the stormwater in our document. It's here. There's the stormwaters that are added in. So we've got council receives the report. We've got obviously the progression of following the two options. And then third is to discontinue the further investigation of the other three. We approve the preferred option as multi-council. This is a recommendation. And we approve the consultation document, which requires some amendments, is what we've seen there, with staff authorised to make amendments reflecting the legal review and other minor amendments if required. So that includes the stormwater. And then we've got 6, 7 and 8. We want to roll on up. So we've got that. The other option is around the recognition of improvement in-house delivery as a proposed approach, whether that is an option. That we note the contracted management of services have been considered and not recommended at this time, and that we include preferred approaches in the water services delivery plan, and so that takes in the stormwater, and that we update the consultation document accordingly. So is anybody prepared to move that mighty recommendation?
I'm more than happy to move all parts of that recommendation, numbers 1 through 9. Except for numbers, we'll continue with 6 as the water stormwater. So you have to do with 1 through to 9. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Peter.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry, that's rude. If we pass this recommendation 4, I mean, because do we still have to carry on with part 2? Is it necessary to, progress the IBU discussion?
Yes, because that's an option that we're putting out to the community. Yeah, we've got a preferred option. We're going up for consultation to show that we've considered that the other option is to have an in-house business unit. So that's the comparison. There's some glaring numbers there. There's some time frames. So yes, we do, because we're going to have a consultation. Yes, seconded. Thank you, Peter. Any further discussion? So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. That's been a big journey. It's significant. We'll go out for consultation and see what happens in getting our understanding across our community. Not a small decision.
I think I've got the liberty to acknowledge the leadership of yourself, Council. What is a legacy decision? I'd also acknowledge the hard work Vaughan's put in. He's been pretty involved in this for a couple of years now, I think, and his leadership in terms of the establishment committee has been instrumental in us making progress to this point. So, appropriate to mention that.
If I can comment, the vision that our previous CEO has shown in this process is one of the key reasons why you have local authorities that are doing what they're doing. Unprecedented, I believe, in our history in New Zealand. So that vision, Dom, I know that you have invested a lot of personal effort into this, so it's quite momentous. But I also, again, and thank you for acknowledging the team, Fiona, Susan, Kenny, Sandra, Tamara, Andrea, Darren, and others, Lania, Sean, Chris, Niall. We got Niall at a great time because he'd done some of this work at Hamilton City. It was fantastic.
Seconded, yeah.
Matthew, Tuatani, there are so many people. This has been a massive effort, and it hasn't been done without a scrambling in terms of some of our BAU. So Fiona has led the culmination of this report. As she was dealing with a storm event, I got a draft on the Saturday, and I got the almost final draft on the Monday. And so she was dealing with that at the same time. So the team understand this is a legacy decision. They wanted to do due respect to the decision that you have to make in our community. And I just thank them for their efforts, and I think they've done a fantastic job.
Yeah. I guess for you, Vaughan, with the link in with the reforms before, this journey's been quite interesting. You probably learned a lot from those reforms that failed, and with the change in the mandate with the new government, which probably a lot of us did breathe a sigh of relief, because this has been designed by us, for us. And the government are actually very interested in us because we're the only councils in New Zealand that are working together at scale as 7 councils. A lot of councils are just doing their own business units down in the South Island, just individual business units. And where's their economies of scale? Where's their buying power? Where's their opportunity? Yeah. And of course, the challenge for us will be is if this goes ahead. Well, obviously, we're going up with the third option is what does our council look like after this? And that is a conversation that happens in tandem with this, because there's staff will move, transition, there'll be jobs that are currently partly waters and other things. What does it look like? So not just closing my eyes to this one, is that there's actually another large piece of work to do for CEs as well, to work through what remains but it has to be begun now, because you can't just wait until it happens and now what do we do? There's actually a lot of thinking and planning and strategy around that. So just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of work going forward that leads from this decision today.
And I'm grateful that we seem to have talked about water all term, because this isn't my day job, so it takes a little bit of getting your head done when you, but yeah, I feel we talked about it every week, but it's been great, because I still can't quite a lot of things, but I get a good, clear feeling.
Yeah, no, thanks. And Vaughan,
Obviously want to acknowledge the leadership that's been recognised and all round. Just want to also put a plug in for next week in Kairapiro, 7th of May. An opportunity for elected members amongst the 7 councils to come together to understand each other's position and hear from the Minister of Local Government, hear from Brett Olsen, who's doing an independent review of Waikato what done well and not what the economics of it look like. So look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, because we've got a hearing that morning, so we plan to be there for 1 o'clock, and we'll be carpooling over of these. It's our council day, so no to attend. There's no getting out. It's Wednesday, so thank you, and we'll see you then. Right, with that, we'll now break for morning tea.
Chocolate biscuits?
Yeah, there's some chocolate.
Okay, welcome back. We will now move on to item 7.3. We've got the planning team in the chamber. So it's plan change 61, the approval being sought to publicly notify the plan change. Thanks, Carolyn and Nathan. Joe Sherman and Ellie in support of the bank.
Good morning. Well, we're here today to seek your approval to publicly notify plan change 61 by the end of May. And the report contained a few minor additions that we wanted to include into the plan change. And we talked a little bit about the map work. So we're either happy to take the item as read, or we can go through those points that were in the report.
I think the Matamata chapter was the big piece of work, wasn't it? Engaging with our mana whenua around their narrative around the locality.
And their aspirations and what they wanted. Yep.
So this is going out for consultation, obviously, to the community and with. So are there any questions? I think, like we've had some quite thorough workshops, went to mana whenua forum and a number of times as well. So what you've drafted is, there's a few tidy ups, which was good opportunity to do a tidy up. So it's pretty much ready to go for us to accept as for going into submissions. Are there any comments? Okay, would someone like to move the recommendation 1 through to 4?
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Sainsbury, seconded Sharon. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Fire ahead. Yeah.
Good luck, have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's there'll be a few submissions come through, and I think already doing that pre-consultation was really helpful, though, wasn't it? Informing, which I think was really helpful because they were just catch up with the people connected in those reserves that were getting caught in that space. So it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Righty-ho. We will now move on to 7.4. So Nathan will stay here with us as the delegations under the fast track legislation.
Cool. So I guess I'm happy to take this as read. So we have two forms of fast track legislation in play at the moment. We have the Natural and Built Environment Act, which was the precursor. Well, I guess it was supposed to be the replacement for the RMA, but it's been since repealed apart from that fast track element. And we also have the Fast Track Approvals Act. So the MBEA will stay in place while the current applications work its way through it, and once they've been finished with, then that will drop off, and the Fast Track Approvals Act will be the main, I guess, fast track approvals process. So we don't have any delegations under those acts as council staff at the moment. We don't have, as a council, generally don't have any decision abilities under those acts. We can only provide comments to the Minister for Infrastructure or the Minister for the Environment, and they are the decision maker in some aspects of it, and then the expert panel becomes the decision maker in terms of the substantive application. So really all we're doing is we're making comments, we're nominating people to the expert panel, we can appeal a decision, so we can make a decision regarding that. So that's pretty much it, and I've suggested that our delegations are the same or similar to that we currently hold under the Resource Management Act, because any comments we make will be from a resource management perspective, largely.
Great, thanks for that explanation. I think that's really summed it up really well as to what this is all about. So if there's no questions or clarification, could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Russell. And a seconder, so move Russell, seconder, so we'll put the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried.
There's a lot changing. I don't know how you guys keep up, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Well, these things sprung up, don't they? And of course the big one is the solar farm that's currently underway.
Yes.
It was through the COVID fast track piece of legislation.
And then the extension to that is coming through the MBEA. So, it's all fun.
It's interesting. It's really interesting, though.
Yeah.
And like our locality is a place of interest. Thanks, Nathan. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, I'll now move on to, I might as well go back to the LTNZ conference on L7.2. So I just jumped off that in the room. 7.2 is just the one that I'm leading. Obviously, we've got our 2025 local government conference coming up in July from the 15th to the 17th. They've actually shortened it, slightly changed the format, but it was got to get to Christchurch. So,
Adrian, wasn't there some sort of backlash because Christchurch pulling out of LGNZ?
So they decided that because regional council, Christchurch City is the only one that's pulled out because it's the surrounding districts. It's location, and it is.
It's very,
Yeah. So we've got obviously the recommendation there that the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and CEO attend, along with 2 additional councillors, and follow that up in due course. So I would like to move that recommendation. Yes, James Sainsbury will second it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, we'll now move down to item, actually, if we do the chief executive report, bring Lania down. Oh, you're doing it? Sorry. I just tell you, for some reason I just assumed, and it says here on my run sheet that when I was doing it. So right, 8.2, the financial report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Adrian. Lania is on a well-earned trip with her mother.
Oh, good.
She's left this in my responsibility, which is great. What I would say to you is we are tracking a little bit behind with our timing of these reports, and so I actually, for this was compiled, I looked at the March figures for myself, and pleasantly, and not pleasantly, I shouldn't say that. I'm pleased to say that things are consistently overall good. That doesn't mean to say that we don't have some areas that we are budgets aren't being met, and a classic example of that is our spas and halls revenue, but we've adjusted that in our 25-26 annual plan figures, budgets. But other than that, overall, we're tracking very well at an operational level, and that, as I say, you give you the headline that the March figures are looking the same, and at the March report, we're also doing predictions to the end of financial year. So we are, I have to confess, we are tracking behind with our timing on the report. So I do apologise for that. It's simply a function of the team having to do a lot of work on waters, for example. But rest assured, I look at the numbers myself, make sure there's no surprises for you. So just repeating the point that operationally, and I know you've got all the graphs, and hopefully you find those informative. I go to the statement on page 165, which brings things together, and I look at firstly our operational result, and we're in a positive position there. There are some things that are not due to our control that give us that positive outcome. One of those is there's money that we technically would have put into last financial year that we weren't allowed for accounting purposes, which is the 800,000 for the Better Off funding. It's come into this financial year, so I have to be upfront about that. So it is still good news, but it's I don't want to create a picture that everything is hunky dory. Things are going okay, and we're under control to an extent. The other one is there's a certain amount of desludging work that's an operating cost we haven't started yet. We haven't started from an operating perspective. We're actually desludging in Matamata Wastewater Treatment Plant as a capital project. So desludging is happening, but we're fortunate that we're now able to do that through there for now, capitalising it. And then there's some other Better Off funding that some other revenue that we got from subsidy for that we didn't think we were going to get for the one that we lost funding for.
The
transport choices as well. So there's some of those things that are causing a position to look better than it would otherwise. But overall, there's no surprises for me overall. The areas that we thought might go out, gone out, but the other areas we're pleasingly okay at this point.
I was going to just send this through you quietly, but you know, I saw, and I'm sorry, sort of the SPA is something that's probably an easy thing to poke your finger at, but I probably wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say, I can see you're under budget, but tell me how you're going to improve things. That really is my job, to say, what are you doing about it? Is it just bad budgeting? I see it under staff, I see that this, that, and the other. We seem to have a lot of reasons why we're under, but what are we doing to reverse that trend?
And you're absolutely right, Councillor. The main issue for that was bad budgeting, over-optimistic budgeting, which we've corrected in the new financial year. Those operational impacts do have an impact, but they don't make a fundamental difference. The SPAs have traditionally cross-subsidised pools because, and they still do to an extent, but they were going to cross-subsidise them a bit more based on the budget that we put in, and that's not achievable yet. The big thing in terms of the future of the SPA is this feasibility case to see whether we do an expansion. You will recall the decision on the big development was not to go ahead, and you made provision for some form of smaller scale development potentially, and we have to do that feasibility study as to whether or not that is going to be a fundamental game changer out there. So it's still doing well on its own. How much better it can do as part of that feasibility study. As I say, the team are well focused on trying to manage operational issues. Yes, we've seen drop off in custom, and we've seen that.
That's strange.
We've seen that.
That's really strange.
But the economic environment.
No, there's people busy. You know, it's buoyant.
Yeah, but in domain house, I guess with beauty sales might be a bit more discretionary spend.
Anyway, I mean, I just hope that we are doing
Yeah,
something.
absolutely. Yes, that's fair. Absolutely fair.
Any other questions?
Sorry, what I just say on that same document on page 165, I talked about the operational favourable comparative. I also have to confess about the capital comparative, which might look favourable. But what that bottom section of that graph is telling you, that we've done 21 to the end of February, 0.6 million worth of capital against a year-to-date budget of 40. That's not actually good news. That is not good news. It's saying we are not getting through the capital as quickly as we would like. The big one is Matamata wastewater treatment plant. That's huge. But yeah, I don't want to create any illusions about what that means. It means we're not doing as much work as we want to do, and that's coming through the project reports as well.
Yeah, that was actually my question: is our optimism? We're rating for this work to be done,
Councillor,
but we're unable. Yeah, but we aren't able to achieve it. But like, will some of this actually progress? Like,
Yes.
still, because we generally it's about 70% we achieve.
Yes,
isn't it?
yes. I expect us to do better than what we've done in the past. That's what I expect, and I know there's been some really big payments go through last month.
Well, the stadium's progressing
Yes.
beautifully.
All I would say is, what I have said to the team is, we put a capital program to you in the LTP. I remember saying this to you. I remember the question being asked by a number of councillors, can you deliver on this? And we said, this is the best effort to see that we can. I said to the team, look, what we're showing here, people, and it's not a criticism of the team at all. I said, we do have to be more realistic. In June, I want to see a program for 25-26, which is we can deliver on. Now, that big Matamata wastewater treatment plant can change this picture quite dramatically. But the reality is, we've now let the contract for the build. We've got through the site establishment, largely, and so, but we're not going to see another 15 million of expenditure on that between now and the end of the financial year. So I just need to say to you, well, favourable looks favourable from a capital perspective. The real story is we're not getting all the work done.
But it is progressing. I think the biggest thing is with the Matamata wastewater plant is that it is happening. It's not like it's not happening.
No.
It's underway, and you always, and there'll be things happen outside of our control for that to occur. Bruce?
Well, no, just on that, but the fact is that the delays are not necessarily because you have a lack of resource. No,
No, not.
it's in that particular case, it's a case of designs and all sorts of things.
And I was just thinking, I guess, one of the things to be aware of when we go through these long-term plans and that, and we say, you know, is the amount of capital that we've allowed for correct? And it's, you know, oh, we normally achieve 75%. And then what happens is that you go, okay, we're going to achieve 75%. Let's put the budget in at 75%. And then, oh, everybody's so used to hearing we only achieve 75%, but even though it's been reduced by 25%, you're still only reducing 70, you're still only doing 75% when you should be doing 100% because you've already reduced it. And that's what worries me, is that you're going to end up with this.
Well, there's a lag.
Tapering
It
off.
just keeps lagging.
It's tapering off because, oh, we only deliver 75%. So we only want you to set what's doable, but it's very important that we're getting close, very close to that. And I'm sure you understand that, but yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And look, there is a particular area of our operation, which is, I would call an exemplar for capital works. And that's our roading program. Now, this year, our team are designing next year's projects. The first packet of work will go out early in the financial year. Our contractors know what we let out. Why are we so good then? One of them, we've got great people, by the way. We're very lucky with very experienced people. The other reason I believe is there's a tension from external agency that says, if you don't get this work done, you're not going to get your subsidy. Now, the reality is, and go back to the waters discussion, the Commerce Commission, this is one of their focuses. It's going to be, if you don't achieve what you say in that plan, and we're not comfortable with that, what are they going to do? And they're going to have powers to do stuff. So, what I'm not making excuses. The team understand that we said we'd deliver on something, and we're going to fall short of what we would like to do. And I 100% agree that it has to be an achievable target. And I want the plan for 25-26 revised to look like that for you. I think the biggest thing about it is exactly the point you make. We've got to keep tension on ourselves. We've got to be, our community want to see these things happen. Look, I don't want to say that we aren't seeing great things happening. That stadium's going. That Matamata playground they're doing a fantastic job, that group. And once we get the go, that's going to go junk, and it's awesome for the community. But across the board, in a number of areas, we need to lift our game.
I think when we start looking at the capital program and that sort of stuff, and we talk about the dollars, we don't always see where it fits in a program to fit within that time frame. All right, and that, you know, the do you understand where I'm, you know,
Yeah. Well, it's like the playground. It was budgeted for this financial year, and initially people were thinking we'd kick off last winter. But because of external factors and the fact that we're building a stadium, we can't do two things at once.
But your roading thing is quite defined, isn't it?
Yes.
You can really say, if we're going to be doing Tahuna Road and this bit, you know, boom, boom, boom. But a lot of these other ones are sort of
look, and the big stuff is the other big stuff is the waters, and look, historically what our issue has been there is that we've had the projects, but we haven't had the concept designs advanced sufficiently to move them as quickly as they have. That's probably a function of capacity, to be fair, and that's why one of my issues with the waters is we have to change our game in delivering capital works in this area. We have to fundamentally change it, and I don't think we can change it on our own fast enough. Waters roading it can be done. We can get there. We've got to get there. How quickly can we get there? That's so it's on the radar. But I just have to confess those numbers look favourable on one half, but there's another story to lift the bonnet.
I just have one question.
Sharon's been
Oh, sorry, Sharon. Yes.
Sorry,
you go, Sharon.
No,
you go. Definitely.
Just a question, with the government now changing the rules around building planners or, you know, when they give consents and now they can sign off electricians and they can sign off their own work. Is that much of a financial impact to the budgets that we've put out in terms of income coming back in for our department?
I'm going to touch on a little bit on that in the Q&A later because something just came out. You would have looked at this. But what I can say to you is that's more about it. Actually, in theory, that should lower our costs because self-certification means less work for us to do in certain areas. That's the theory. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's fair to say.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Sharon. Just the question I get, it's not big, but it's just around the freedom camping bylaw that we did. So that's in the strategy engagement section. I thought there was funding for that.
Yes.
Government funding. So I'm confused
Why we did it?
because the government were funding it. It's because it says it's not budgeted for, but there's no, is there an offset somewhere?
Yes, I was going to say, there wasn't, I remember that came to council about getting the approval to go, and we did have
There was a small
yeah.
shortfall, but it wasn't significant.
No, what I'd have to say about and look, I'll go back and check that specifically because I remember that. I remember us as an E-team saying, do we think we can actually get the work done? And then, but what I'll do is double check that. What I would say to you is, in the overall scheme of things, that's something that we can absorb because we've had, and I'm very pleased to see, and I can't actually say why some of these areas are down at the moment. That's why I'm looking at closely to make sure there's no shocks coming to us. But some of the areas we're behind where we were last year, and I suspect some of it has been because we've actually got capital going in the right, some capital is going to operating in some areas before. But I believe we can handle that, but I will get the answer to that question specifically, because I do remember the discussion about it.
Yeah, I think, and thank you for assuring us around the cash flow, you know, like with the budget going forward, because we're now in the last quarter of the financial year, and we really do want council to operate within its budget. You know, what's going to see in a budget, if it's unrealistic, we're almost there. Obviously, there's been a bit extra cost with KBS with the weather event with trees and stuff. That always has an impact on the operational side of dealing with trees. A lot of signs were knocked down too between here and Matamata as well with the wind. A lot of signs are on the side of the road. So, you know, there are some costs there that happen because of an adverse weather event that does impact our budget. But
that we must budget for because it's going to happen.
Well, but you can't. The challenge with that is the challenge we have with that is you cannot predict an adverse weather event, and you can't budget for something that's not happening.
No, but surely there's a contingency for that.
Yeah, so what we do there, to your point about a budget. So we have a trees budget.
Yeah.
So this takes priority over the trees work that we do. That's effectively what we do. And sometimes, and in previous years, there've been times when we've gone over that because we have to get the work done. So that's, but we don't build contingencies everywhere. What I do recall saying the last financial report that we put to you, I did say to you, that my prediction is that for our finances, and I still have this view today, is that in terms of the things that we can control, I feel will be within our budget. So events are the things that we can't control, but even that work at this point, I think we can incorporate at this point. So I hope, it's a prediction that I want to achieve.
Perfect. Right, any further questions? Would someone like to move that the February 25 financial report be received?
I'm happy to move that.
Moved Caleb and seconded Dane. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. And then we'll move to item 8.3, which is the Chief Executive Officer report.
Yes, what I will do, I'm assuming there are a number of these things which are things that council want to have a further discussion of, but I'll just touch on some very briefly. And I welcome any. I'm still getting my head into where I want to go with this report. So for now, I'm just putting together things that are kind of extraordinary, not normal BAU type stuff. That's it.
Must have taken you a while, and sometimes I worry that these sorts of reports take longer than we should. You know what I'm trying to say? Is it a burden on you?
It looked for me, and actually internally.
I said it last
yes, you're right. And yeah. what for me personally, it's a matter of getting together a lot of threads and seeing it coherently. My understanding is the organisation, people in the organisation appreciate report too, because
Okay.
so I personally I personally see this as necessary for me at the moment. I'm not saying this will be the format going forward. I just wanted to put the Easter weather event in there and what came out of that, because it was quite a big event. We had lots of our staff out doing lots of different things. And the number of calls we got, that's only the ones that were lodged. There were a lot of other things that our team and our emergency services dealt with over that time. And I was out of the country, but there were a lot of things they dealt with. The only two updates I would give to you, and I've jinxed this matter, I wrote this report or finished it on the 21st of April. And then just on the Matamata water supply and Tills Road, because potentially we had a number of properties that were not provided with water for the domestic supply for a number of days. We had to report that to our regulator, which we have. The thing was, we never actually got a complaint from them that they didn't get water. So in other words, what we had might have got them through those days.
Tills Road.
Tills Road, sorry, Tills Road.
It's the rural
farm.
properties
Oh,
in
that's
Tills
right.
Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
They have they should have reserve tanks to cover those.
The other comment that I wanted to update you is that all other wastewater treatment plants continue to operate normally, albeit with increased flows. On the 21st of April, we overflowed at our Matamata wastewater treatment oxidation ponds, and we had to report that to our regulator. Why did we overflow? Well, we were dealing with the water that was coming in. This is my simplistic non-engineering explanation. I still have to talk to Darren about this, and how I interpret the report. We still dealt with the inflows, which were increased, that came into our treatment plant. We treated that and went into our ponds. But we had all the rain that fell on top of that surface area as well, and we weren't treating that, and that caused an overflow. And so we reported that to the regional council, and the regional council acknowledged that. The team, I suppose the learning out of that was that occurred on the 20th, for me, my observation is that occurred at some stage on the 21st of April. We reported it on, was that Monday? We reported it on Thursday, and we could have reported it earlier. So that's our learning for us. We could have actually. Our team did that.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't have thought.
Look,
Oh,
they say 200 mils of over millimeters. I know Susan had captured at 400 millimeters over 4 days of her property.
On her property, yeah.
But 200 mils of Matamata.
80.
When I look at the data on the treatment plant, I have a little bit of. I haven't been able to upload those two, but fundamentally the rain that fell, which was considerable, was we couldn't obviously.
To give you the example, the Waihau River was flowing at 7.1. I've been watching the regional council website, so it was sitting at 7.1, which is quite low historically. And within a matter of days, it was 10.4. Hence, the lake was there very quickly. So there was a lot of rain close to the range, and Matamata was close enough to catch some of that rain. No, we're further away from the hills. Yeah. So
they got up on Carrier Hills here, they got.
Yeah, they got wind and rain. Yeah, but that was just the environment, how localised it can be. Sorry, no, I just thought.
No, thank you. That's appreciate that. Transfer station, we know that is important to our community. So just wanted to reassure you that our team's working through all of those risks, and our goal is still to have a seamless transition from the contractor to our operation. Mobile waste treatment plant, you may recall, I briefed you on these sludge issues. Not everything's resolved there, but I just wanted to give that update to you about how we're dealing with this excess sludge and staying within our overall budget. The key thing is that we're not trucking away the additional sludge, we're putting it in situ. And the question I asked is that a long-term solution, or are we going to have to move it again? And there it is. And I think I may have talked to you before about how, as we reduce the capacity and need for the amount of space we have in our ponds, what are we going to do with that land? And there's potential for that land to actually be an in-situ place for us sludge and not have to truck it away. So that's what the team are working through.
So that has to be bundled and.
Yes, it'll have to be bundled and everything. Absolutely. Yeah, we have to ensure that it is appropriately.
do we wrap it up or something?
No, well, you have a seal. As I'm an engineer,
Potentially
clay seal on the bottom, and then you have like we did with our transfer station sites. You seal on the bottom and then seal and then you grass on top.
I think the regulator is looking at that because they realise the cost of sending it to landfill is such a significant cost. Peter?
So is it still treated then before it goes to be covered in grass? We just put it in a hole and grass?
So it's considered, it's contaminated material. And that's why it gets trucked away to be sealed at another place, Hampton Down. So what we've done for now, and hopefully what we're thinking is a good option, is do the same thing here, because you get rid of the trucking costs, the handling costs. So yeah, the goal is to try and put it down once and keep it there. So the short term is making sure that we don't blow our budget. That's the short term. What is unresolved, and the question I've asked is, I still haven't heard the accountability. I've had a discussion directly with the consultant involved, and I have shared council's displeasure and my displeasure about why we're in this position. That is still an ongoing discussion as far as I'm concerned.
Keep it going.
So that's gone from 2,000 cubes to 6,000 cubes to 11,000 cubes. So how much of that are you talking about potentially being able to leave on site?
5,000. We've still trucked to 6,000, 5,000 at this stage of that. Yeah. But there could be more from the remaining ponds. Like, we've got a program to desludge more in all 3 sites as an operating cost. But the option to actually use our site in a different way is.
So what I'm getting at though is, so has about half of it already been trucked away?
Yes.
So is there an opportunity for that, if you're going to go through the process of making it able to be kept on site, is there an opportunity to use that to be more than just the 5,000?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
The other ones too, and jam it all in one place and say, will that transport as well?
100% that we should be looking at how we can use that site, because we've got land that we won't, other than for grazing. 100%. So we're not thinking about just the 5,000 cubes that we've got. We're actually thinking,
as much as you can.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Now, whether that means we take from other sites or not, probably not, because we're under time pressure at Chalaha Wastewater Treatment Plant in particular, because of the crate capacity there. There's a lot of infiltration, and there's also high on the radar of Regional Council, understandably, is what we call Pond C in Morrinsville, because we've got the equivalent of a large dam that if it failed into the river, it would be catastrophic from an environmental perspective. So, but we've got a lot of sludge still in Matamata. So, yeah.
So, can I just say, this option is a long-term approved option that will be accepted by the regulator?
Because it's, I'm thinking, how many years is it before you're allowed to build on it?
Well, look, you won't.
You won't build on it. No, so.
You won't put a house.
And it's part of the designation within the wastewater treatment plant. So you probably wouldn't.
You probably can't even graze animals on it.
No.
May not.
No.
You may not. What I was going to say was, I might put a cell phone on. What I was going to say was, sorry, Councillor Chu, sorry, can you just?
I'm just saying, from an our Bible, we're saying you can only, we're changing the criteria. We've gone and put 11,000 cubes on a thing, and now then they're going to say, oh no, we're not going to allow that. It's going to have to be sealed on somewhere else.
What Waikato Regional Council will be I believe will be the key party here. And I guess what this issue of increased floodfall raised was, we've been thinking about trucking. Have we given enough thought to the alternative? And that's where we're at, okay? Now, look, the reality is we may not be able to satisfy our regulator. That's the reality. But the other reality is we're going to have a lot of land, quite a bit of land there, that we're not going to be able to use for anything else. So I don't know how far, go back a couple of years, they looked at this. I don't know. But it's tension like this that says we need to put this under microscope.
Oh, if there's no Further questions? Would someone like to move that the CEO's report be received?
I'm happy to move it. See you.
Thank you. Caleb, seconded. Russell, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carry. Thank you. Can I now have someone move us into public excluded, please? It's Dane, second Sue. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.